Hello everyone and welcome back. On today's episode, we are going over some mid-game tactics. We've already taught you a bit about basics and a little bit about the early game, but now it's time to get past that and get to that victory. Joining us today is Holo, who is a Hyper Scape founder, does a ton of awesome Hyper Scape content and streams, and has even been a part of the Twitch Rivals Hyper Scape tournaments. So we're going to be learning all the magic from him today, and you're not going to want to miss it. Welcome to the pod. So now that we have already figured out the early game, it's time to get to not only the mid game, but all the things that come with it, like the sectors and the map, and making sure you have your loadout maximized. So Holo, from your point of view, what are the important things to know about the mid game before you even get into any of those advanced tactics?
Yeah, so mid-game is the point where the zones have collapsed a little bit more, and you're going to be nearby a lot more teams than you were in the early beginnings of the game. So things start to get a little bit more dangerous, particularly if you're a player who likes to try to avoid fighting. It starts to become a little bit more inevitable. So this is the section of the game where you really need to make sure that you've been prioritizing finding the loadout that you're most comfortable with, that you can stand and fight with. Because otherwise, if you're out of your elements, you are going to be forced to take fights more than likely. So you need to make sure that you're giving yourself a fighting chance by having properly leveled weapons and properly leveled up hacks.
Also in the mid game, you have to worry about these sectors. Once they start closing in on you and collapsing, it can really change the state of the game. So are there any tips behind the sectors specifically that you can give to our viewers?
One thing that makes Hyper Scape unique and different from other battle royales that we currently have available is that, unlike those other BRs where it's a constantly shrinking circle, Hyper Scape has a different closing sector mechanic where you have the different building districts that make up the 100% urban environment map essentially disappearing or collapsing. And so that can make your rotation path a little bit more unpredictable. It can create different choke points that you'd often are able to avoid with the more standard circle mechanic. So it's really important to always be keeping an eye on your map and being aware of what sort of route you might have to be taking for the next rotation, because in Hyper Scape, sometimes your route is basically determined for you, and you have to be prepared to fight your way through to get to the next safe zone.
And once you do get stuck out into a completely collapsed sector, you're pretty much out in the open with no cover whatsoever. How does that change the way that you want to stay away from those areas?
Your hacks are your best friends. Having some sort of mobility hack, such as teleport or maybe even slam, to try and close the distance between you and the next safe zone. Things like invisibility are wonderful. Even if you do get spotted, you are able to break line of sight by going invisible for about 5 seconds. Sometimes you can't break line of sight. Maybe you need something like armor, just to soak some damage from both the damage that the sector does or from enemy teams shooting at you. But honestly, the best way to make sure that you're not in a bad spot trying to rotate to the next safe zone is to make sure that you rotate early.
Okay, so let's talk about some more advanced sector strategies, because now we know how dangerous they can be. But you can also use that to your advantage, whether you are trying to gate people from coming out of a collapsing sector and stopping them before they get to safety, or trying not to be on the other end of that. So are there any strategies you can share on gatekeeping sectors that are closing, or vice versa, trying to avoid getting gatekept?
The unique mechanic of collapsing districts means that sometimes there's only one safe area to travel through. So if you're set on gatekeeping, find one of those choke points and then just sit on top of a rooftop. There's going to be a rooftop, and you're going to be able to maximize your visibility, your lines of sight. So that means that any opponent that's too slow rotating into the next safe zone basically doesn't have much of a fighting chance against you, unless they have some of the mobility hacks that I mentioned previously. But otherwise, you can put a lot of teams in a really awkward position by just setting up on a rooftop, again, maximizing lines of sight and gatekeeping them that way.
Something else that is really unique about Hyper Scape is the ecosystem. Can you tell us any tips on maybe reviving safely or getting your loot back after you get revived? Because not all the time are you able to get revived next to the loot that you just dropped. Sometimes you have to travel really far to get revived and you're stranded in the middle of nowhere with no loot to be found. What are the best ways to rebuild your loadout after you get revived?
Yeah, the ecosystem is honestly one of my favorite revive mechanics in a battle royale so far, because it does keep everybody on your team involved. And again, the mid game is where a lot more eliminations tend to happen because you're just more densely packed with other players. So if you or a teammate gets eliminated and you need to go for a revive system, that's often just a game sense call. You're likely going to die near an enemy tombstone that you can be revived on just because you were probably in an engagement with another team. So there might be a tombstone nearby, either from that squad that you've been fighting or just a nearby squad. That's just a sort of game sense decision that your teammates have to make. Is it worth the risk reward of trying to stick a res in the open or in the middle of a gunfight? You say, hey, this team, got third partied, they're fighting. Maybe we can try and sneak this res really quickly and I can get my guns back that are right there. But in some cases, there's just too many other teams on top of you. So in that case, you have to make the call to maybe back up to a revive that's 200-300 meters away and you don't know what kind of loot is back there. If that happens, you really just have to, there's likely very little hope that you're going to get your loadout back. And you just have to kind of pick up whatever's on the ground. Sometimes you have to take a minute after getting revived as well to try to find unlooted buildings. You can look for buildings that haven't had the doors and windows broken off of them yet. You can search around for the little yellow loot chests that are hidden around the map. It's really just a game sense decision. Again, sometimes it's worth trying to stick that 5-second res in the open in the middle of a gunfight. Sometimes you can pull it off and grab your gear right away, but sometimes if you're playing for the long term, you have to make that decision to try and back up 200 or 300 meters and just play the rest of the game with subpar loot until you can kill a team and take their good stuff.
We're not always able to get our weapons maxed out right away. Sometimes you might run up on a weapon that is already maximized. And what are some of the decisions you have to make in choosing something that's leveled up over trying to get something leveled up and trying to make that, the best call at the moment?
Yeah, it's, as you said, it's really important to make sure that your weapons and your hacks are fully leveled when you venture into the mid game, because other teams are going to have fully leveled weapons and items. Their damage output is probably going to be higher than yours if you don't as well. Sometimes you have to make that decision to just drop what you're more comfortable with and take the item that has the faster cooldown that lets you be more aggressive or have the option to disengage from a fight more frequently if you feel like you're being pressured too much. Likewise, let's say you find a weapon that's fully fused. I feel like with weapons, sometimes it's more important to take the fully fused one, because if you do encounter a solid team of players who have fully fused weapons and your weapons aren't gold as well, it's very hard to win that damage race against them. So you also need to stand on equal terms, at least in terms of the damage that you're doing with every single shot that you land.
Obviously, having your weapons maxed out and your hacks ready for action is important, but there were some new things added into Hyper Scape upon release after the beta, like the magnet hack that we mentioned previously. And there's also some weapons that have kind of risen the ranks, so to say, in terms of popularity among the community and kind of shaking up the meta of Hyper Scape. So from your perspective, Holo, how do you feel about how these hacks have changed the game? And what are your thoughts on the current meta of Hyper Scape?
As far as the meta goes in terms of hacks and weapons, the one that's obviously a big point of discussion right now is the Mammoth Shotgun. You can't deny the power of the Mammoth Shotgun. It is one of the best, if not the best weapon in the game right now, simply because it has such chunky burst damage potential. Hyper Scape's focus is on survivability. You have 120 HP health pool. You have all these different hacks that lets you disengage from a fight safely if you feel the need to. But sometimes just opening up a gunfight with a crack from a Mammoth Shotgun for almost 100 damage, just even if you don't kill that player outright in a single shot, you're going to cripple that player, and it makes it extremely hard for them to stand and take the fight, essentially forcing them to try to disengage and run away. And then you throw into the mix things like Magnet that basically say, no, you have to stay here and fight me. And so that's why the meta has become very swingy in terms of people carrying heavy burst damage weapons like the Mammoth Shotgun, like the Riot 1. So that's why we see the meta, at least at high levels on Hyper Scape PC, more oriented towards those style of weapons.
All right, we've gone over a ton of tactics, we've learned a bunch of strategies, and now it's time to have a couple of laughs. We gathered up all of the community plays that we thought Holo would enjoy today and stuff that kind of fits on topic with some of the things we've been talking about, and we want you to check them out, so go for it.
So we've got a player with Slam and Invisibility, honestly one of the meta loadouts in terms of hacks right now. Gives you a lot of aggression and a lot of disengagement power, and man, the Hexfire is just absolutely shredding. Is that a quad kill feed I see there with the Hexfire? I don't know what to say to that other than that. That's putting that 150 round magazine to really good use. This is from Cross516 on Reddit. So we've got the shotgun and the Komodo. Interesting build here. Again, more chunky burst damage. You don't see the Komodo much. Putting the Komodo to use up close is an interesting call since it does do reduced damage. Wow, okay. I was just about to say it does reduce damage at close range, but at long range, it deals out a lot. And that was an impressive long range ground to aerial shot with the Komodo. You really just don't see it used in that capacity. It's much more common for those roles to be reversed where the player with the Komodo is firing from the sky down on a player down on the ground. It's just easier to use because you can hit the ground next to the player. That splash damage takes over. If you're shooting at someone who's in the air, you have to hit them. And that was a really impressive, precise shot with the Komodo. It's like we've got Magnet. I see a Magnet, which is great. We have Mammoth Shotgun and the Protocol Sniper Rifle, but he's got the Protocol out indoors, which means he's going for a clip. All right, there's the Magnet play. Wow, the no-scope with the Sniper Rifle connects, finishing him off in the back with the Mammoth Shotgun and the emote wave. I love it. You know, there's a little bit of cheese with that, you know, using the sniper indoors, plus the Magnet, plus the emote at the end. Hats off. I love that kind of content. That was great.
We could not let you leave here without analyzing a play of your own. Now, we grabbed this clip from one of your recent YouTube videos because it was just that awesome. There's a ton of people everywhere, but that didn't scare you one bit, so we're gonna need you to break this one down for us.
So this was from a recent highlights video I released on YouTube. So this particular segment of this video just has to do with illustrating the power of the Skybreaker. One of my favorite weapons since playing this behind closed doors, you know, the early tech test days and things like that. This weapon is slept on, in my opinion. It really allows you to chunk multiple enemies at a time, and when it's gold and you're firing it from the range that I'm firing it at, over 20 meters, it's doing more than half, it's taking away more than half their health with a single hit. So really, all you see here is me using it to soften up targets and then drop in on top of them. Switch to a higher DPS weapon, like the Ripper, just to put in those finishing shots, and just wiping out a whole lot of people in a short time frame.
All right, thank you so much, Holo, for joining us and for spreading some knowledge to the viewers. Are there any final words you'd like to give the fans?
If anyone's out there is interested in learning how to play the game better, I stream on Twitch almost every single day at twitch.tv/holo. You can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/hologames, where I upload not only gameplay highlights, but tips and tricks to help you learn how to play the game at a higher level, how to improve. Yeah, I just appreciate everyone always supporting the content and hanging out, and I love seeing all these high-level players in the community as people get their hands on it and learn how to play the game, and all the excitement around, you know, improving. It's so much fun. Just love to see it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And for everyone watching, don't forget that you can submit your own clips on Twitter using hashtag Hyper Scape. So feel free to submit your clips for next week's episode because we're going to be going over some late game tactics and everything that comes along with that. You're not going to want to miss it. Now, before you go, don't forget, we have another memory shard hint for you. Check it out.